Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chatham Select Board meeting of September 20th, 2022. Let the record show the meeting started at 5:30 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16th, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31st, 2023, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted via in-person and remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in that order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. So good evening, everyone, and we'll have a roll call here. Mr. Nicastro? Present. Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Shell?
Present.
Mr. Metters?
Present.
And the chair is present as well. First item of business is the acceptance or approval of the minutes of September 13th, 2022. Motion to...
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. And a second. Discussion, edits, suggestions. Mr. Shell and then Ms. Davis.
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Shell.
Let me start by saying, Shauna, this is a long one. I'll give you my note, so you don't have to worry about.
Okay, good.
I'm on page 5, where I suggested amending the motion, and Mr. Nicastro accepted my amendment. It was my intention to broaden the motion into incorporating pretty much the entire discussion that we'd had with respect to the water conservation restrictions and changes and additions and removals, whatever. And indeed, at least one member of the public sent me a note that indicated that their sense of what I had tried to say was what I thought I was saying. So with that predicate, I'd like to strike in the first line the words private irrigation wells and over, I think that's occupants, in the next line, occupancy of short-term rentals. And let me say, I welcome any improvements on this from anybody, but particularly Mr. Nicastro. Insert current water conservation restrictions together with possible amendments suggested or discussed, including those relating to private irrigation wells, over-occupancy of short-term rentals, and exceptions for home maintenance, core business functions, and boat maintenance, private and commercial, and then carry on to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee.
Good. Mr. Nicastro, yes, please.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with what Mike just said. Sean, I was just a little confused because you referred to this as an amended motion. As it was the main motion was made by me. That's on the prior page. So, and then Mike made offered an amendment, which I seconded. Is that what you mean here? Okay. All right. Thank you.
So you're going to give that language to Shauna?
Yes, I will.
Michael, thank you.
And then I just had one other typo on page. Here it is. Yeah, I'm sorry. On page 8, the paragraph that begins, Mr. Duncanson said an advantage. In the penultimate line, the word immediate at the end of the sentence, I think should be immediately.
Okay. Okay, we've had a motion with an amended language there. Mr. Metters, what say you?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And Mr. Dyken says aye as well. Next item of business are public announcements and agenda item requests. I know that Katie Donovan is here this evening, Acting in the town's stead, Jill is not with us this evening, but Katie is here, and she does have an announcement. Katie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm joined here tonight by Jeff Thibodeau. Jeff is the town's new principal planner. Jeff comes to us most recently as from his previous role as the executive director of the Arundel Wildlife Land Trust, but Jeff has served in various roles in public and private planning practices. He's got over 20 years of experience, and we are very excited to have Jeff on our team. He'll be working primarily with the planning board, but working also with the other various land use boards served by the Community Development Department. So just wanted to give Jeff a brief introduction here tonight.
Thank you very much, Katie. Nice to meet all of you. I look forward to working with you.
Well, welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yes.
Welcome. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Jeff. Any other public announcements and/or agenda item requests? Any announcements from the board this evening, select board this evening? Any announcements from those folks that are here and present? Oh, I see hands up out there in virtual land. I'm going to go across the board here. I see Mr. Frank Musina. Frank. Frank, I think you're talking, but yeah, there you go.
There you go. Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate that. I just want to give a brief announcement and a thank you. Of course, I'm sure the selectman is aware, and a number of people in town, that on August 29th, the National Park Service entered the South Chatham Village into the listing as a National Register Historic Place. As you know, this was something that's started 20 years ago by the South Chatham Village Associations, and we appreciate their work. This is quite an accomplishment for us in terms of us being our third National Register site in the town, a National Register district, the Old Village, now the old South Chatham Village District, and the Marconi. I just want to invite members of the Select Board or a member of the public on Saturday at 3 o'clock. The South Chatham Village Association will be holding its annual meeting, and during that annual meeting, Eric Dre, who was instrumental in preparing the application for us and getting it worked through the Mass Historic Commission as well as the federal review and approval, will be providing a presentation on the actual application of the South Chatham Village as a National Register Historic District. So again, it's Saturday the 24th, this Saturday at 3 p.m. If you're available, please stop by. We'd love to have you. Thank you very much. And I want to thank Katie, as Katie's there, as well as Michelle Clark and the other people of the community development staff for the support that they gave us, the Chatham Historical Commission, during the years that it's taken us to work this through the process. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, that's nice. Thank you, Frank, and thank you for your efforts securing that for South Chatham. Where was that going to be held on the 24th again? I'm sorry, Frank.
Again, it'll be Saturday the 24th at 3 p.m. at the South Chatham Village Hall on Route 28 at 3 o'clock.
Thank you, Frank, and congratulations.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, I see Alex Halila's hand is up as well. Alex.
Right, get my camera on and unmute myself. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just want to let people know that tax bills will be mailed this Friday, September 23rd, and they are due November 1st. Again, you can pay online or at 549 Main Street. You can use the Dropbox, mail-in checks, that's acceptable too, as well as in person. So if you do not receive a tax bill within, I'd say by a week from Friday, by September 30th, I would contact the Treasurer's Office to request a copy of your tax bill because we don't want anyone to be late. Again, due by November 1st at 4 p.m., and I'm sure I'll be making more announcements regarding the due date as we get closer to that date. Thank you.
Well, Alex, thank you for that reminder. It's always timely and always takes me by surprise, but anyway. Thank you, Alex. Thanks much. Any other announcements and/or agenda item requests, either online or here? I see none. Okay. On to our next item of business, which is our standard Standard item, consider amendments to water conservation restrictions. We did discuss this last week. I believe Dr. Duncanson has made a slight modification to the water conservation measures. And so, Dr. Bob, if you're out there in virtual land, I do see you there. You're welcome to comment on the change to the conservation measures. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, members of the board. Yes, following the board's discussion last week with regard to primarily boat washing, I was asked to draft up some revised language, which basically what I did was I took the press release that was issued back in June and made some modifications to that, updating it to reflect that we are now in a level 3 critical drought situation, and that still remains in effect for the Cape. I removed the section that talked about boat washing out of the list of items that are prohibited, and moved that over to a new section under number 3, where we now have the exceptions to the restriction, including health and safety, agriculture and livestock, core functions of a business such as nursery centers, and then added the following: in addition to the general exemptions noted, the specific exemptions below have been adopted. And the first one of those was one that was previously in the prior section that talked about boats being rinsed to remove fishing-related debris and material, and then added one based on the conversation last week that indicated boat engines may be flushed and boat hulls power washed in preparation for winter storage. So that was provided to the board as suggested redrafts of the existing press release to maybe clarify that a little bit. And then earlier this afternoon, I sent an email out in response to a couple of questions that we at the staff level have received in the last several days regarding the watering of mitigation plantings that have been required by or approved by the Conservation Commission. These mitigation plantings are generally, in the past, have been watered through the use of a temporary irrigation system. And so right now, as you know, there is a ban on the use of irrigation systems. And so some folks have called up looking for some clarification as to whether or not that ban applies to these so-called mitigation plantings. Earlier this year, we did have a specific exemption for mitigation plantings required or approved by the Conservation Commission. And that was back in the May press releases that were issued and adopted based on adoption by the board. But that language was subsequently removed as we got into the level 2 and level 3 critical drought situations. So I just wanted to also bring that one back to the board's attention, that we are getting inquiries from the public regarding the watering of those mitigation plantings by an irrigation system, either temporary or permanent. And so with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. I see hands up here. Mr. Nicastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bob. A question, and then maybe more than one question. On the in the redlined changes under paragraph D, you say vehicles may be washed at a commercial car wash using recycled water. How does a member of the public know, unless it's posted at the car wash, that they're using recycled water? I think most car washes are doing that today, but.
Yes, most car washes today are doing that. Obviously, you wouldn't absolutely know it unless you asked the question or it was posted. I will tell you that I know that Missouri's car wash at George Ryder and 28 uses recycled water because that topic came up the last time we kind of had drought restrictions, I think back in 2017, and we specifically made that inquiry of them and verified that they do use recycled water. But yeah, most car washes today do use recycled water because honestly, for them, it's a cost savings, obviously.
Yeah. I want to bring up Just in terms of equity, I have no problem with the Conservation Commission language being reinserted, as you suggest, whether it's temporary or permanent. I assume that that doesn't affect too many properties. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct. It is a relatively small number of properties that have those mitigation plantings, yes.
Okay. I want to bring up the subject of washing of cars and vehicles. I mean, everybody is different about it. I tend to go to a car wash, probably not frequently enough, because people have noticed my car needing washing. But I understand that there are a lot of people that do wash their cars and trucks. I don't know how much water is consumed by that, but that's an issue that, you know, is consistently being brought up in terms of equity versus, you know, recreational boats, for example. And I understand, because I think you said to the one of the committees, or I saw something in writing this week, that it's really hard to draw a distinction in terms of enforcement on the boating side, between recreational and commercial. You wouldn't know. I guess you'd have to have water police that would check the registration numbers of all the boats to see whether they're commercial or not. But but on the other side, when we're talking about washing of vehicles, and I'm looking for some, you know, equitable treatment here. It seems to me that under paragraph 2, which talks about water, which allows watering on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on certain times by handheld hoses or watering cans, it would seem to me that a washing of your car or truck or other vehicle would be permitted under that. Am I overreading that? We've been sort of presuming that we're banning it. But now I'm looking at that paragraph and thinking maybe that's permissible, as long as they're using a handheld hose and doing it at those times.
I think,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think you'd go back to basically paragraph 1, where the washing of hard surfaces and personal vehicles is specifically prohibited. Paragraph 2, it is
Okay.
primarily related to other watering, you know, lawn and gardens and landscaping, because paragraph 1 has the specific prohibitions.
For personal vehicles.
Right.
So do you think hard surfaces also, the other item that's brought up is furniture, outdoor furniture? And I would think as we're getting into the winter, people are going to want to wash those down before they put them away for storage. Or you think that's banned by the hard surfaces language?
I think that would be banned by the hard surfaces, yes.
Let me just ask you, if the town were to, if the select board were to open this up to allow for watering of, using water to clean outdoor furniture and/or vehicles, how much of an impact do you think that would be negatively? I mean, it's totally speculative, I understand.
It's extremely hard to say, but I would think relative to the amount of water that's pumped in a day, it'd be a relatively small amount. But,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pure conjecture on my part.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just think if we're going to continue to allow all types of boating, that we should probably extend some flexibility to homeowners that want to undertake washing of their vehicles or their furniture, outdoor furniture, as long as they're, you know, conducting it during these limited times. I think I'd like to support our going in that direction, but I'm anxious to hear what others have to say. I know there's been some talk about this at previous meetings.
Yeah, there has. Now, you're not ready to make a motion, or you want some discussion and then a motion, or?
I was looking for discussion.
Okay,
on
all
that.
right. Okay. So, Mr. Metters, and then I've got an opinion as well. and here we go.
Sure, I'll throw my 2 cents in. No, I completely understand what you're saying. I think we got to be real about this. I think ideally we want to be able to protect the water sources we have, be very realistic about, what we want to do for our system and make sure the fire suppression systems and all that other stuff are, fine. But let's be real. So, we ban one category of boats versus another category of boats. That's not going to be realistic to police. Same with cars. There's going to be people who go out on the beach and they want to rinse their vehicles off because of the sand and salt and everything that happens. We know that. I would personally like to ease off some of this stuff, and just hopefully rely on people's common sense to be a good neighbor and not let the watering of a hose run 24/7. Having this big puddle of water running down the street. But if we're gonna let people have a vehicle and get it washed, and a truck being washed, and a boat being washed, and some reasonable watering of their plantings, and we can restrict certain hours to kind of govern things to maybe if you restrict certain watering of a property in certain days on certain times to kind of spread out the usage, maybe that makes more sense, and I'm fine with that, exploring something like that. But I think we got to be very aware of what we're asking of the community to do, and very conscious that we probably won't be able to police a lot of the stuff that we might be throwing out there, and that's what really concerns me, because I don't want to be neighbors ratting out other neighbors being our backup plan of policing this. Like, I think we put reasonable requests out there. I think our community is educated enough and frankly will do the right thing for the most part. And I would rather rely on our citizens' common sense to help out the cause. And frankly, as we're shifting into the fall, I would think that drought status hopefully is going to start shifting a little bit. Obviously, irrigation systems are being shut down. Companies are going out and blowing out systems now, so we are little by little eliminating that from the equation. Renting, it's probably still going to be strong for a while for sure, but that will start at least drift off a little bit. But I have a hard time, telling people to go to the car, pay money to go to a car wash versus just doing it at your own home, or having a company come in and power wash your house, which is fine because it's a business model, whatever. But you can't do it yourself. So I just want to be kind of rely on some common sense, and let's be realistic about what we're asking the citizens to do in this situation.
Thank you, Corey. Anybody else want to weigh in? Mr. Shell?
I would generally endorse what Mr. Metters just said. I guess my first question, Bob, is I know last week we had, I think, a month-to-month comparison that showed that the restrictions were they were effective. We had improved the month-to-month statistics. Do you have anything that's new that tells us that we're doing better, worse, or about the same since those last monthly statistics?
I don't, but Tom Barr is on the call from the Water Division, so he may be able to provide that to you.
Mr. Barr, I see your hand up.
Yes, how you doing? Good evening. To go off of that question there, we are definitely less water use right now. We're about 15.8% less this time last year. So that equates to about 5.3 million gallons for the month of September. So that's September 1st till September 17th when the pumping comparison was taken. So we're averaging about 300,000 gallons less than what we were doing for the most part last year. Listening to the conversation here, I think it's a realistic conversation. Our biggest water usage by far is irrigation systems, and with majority of them being shut off and people respecting that restriction, having people wash their cars, wipe down their stuff for the winter, I don't think is irrational or a bad thing. I think that's the right direction to go, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing on the side of the wells and what we're pumping on a daily basis.
Yeah. If I could just follow that up, I think I don't want to open pardon the term, floodgates, but I think if we can say we want to have Perhaps maybe it's enough to leave the restrictions on irrigation systems in place, subject to the exception that we talked about, and just encourage people to be judicious in their use of water. Otherwise, I think that might be a sensible place to be at this point in time.
Mr. Metters, and
Just one question. I know the pumpage is down, so that's a very positive, data point. Are there any days of the week that are, I guess, more of a concern than any other day of the week that we see? I guess where I'm going with this is, if we were to kind of be a little more flexible with the restrictions, is it a 7-day-a-week item, or do we want to throw a Saturday restriction out there? Like, if there's any particular day of the week that's a concern to us.
So right now, our bigger days are the weekends, because the crowds are still definitely here, and it's usually like Thursday to Sunday is where we're seeing our bigger numbers as they're coming down to their homes and to the restaurants and the local businesses. If we were to have any kind of request, maybe we keep it like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday hand watering only, and then do like the chores of washing your car and washing down your outdoor furniture and stuff on those kind of days, just to kind of limit that. But definitely Saturday, Sunday are usually bigger days for us.
Are they bigger days or days of concern?
Right now, I would say we pump more on those days. My concerns personally are lessened right now, because we're only pumping about 11 hours on those days compared to the 18 hours that we were throughout the summer months. During the week, we're down to around like 7 to 8 hours, Monday through like Thursday. So the equipment is definitely not being taxed as much as it was throughout July and the beginning of August. So I guess concerned but not alarmed.
All right, thank you.
okay, Shereen?
Thanks, Jeff. Tom, what are the optimum or the best hours for per day that you like to see the system pumping at? Like, up
My
your,
dog- Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, so right now, this time of year, 7 hours to 8 hours is probably a good time frame. 10 hours on the weekend. So, I mean, we're in a good spot right now as far as pumping. So I would say about 7 hours is a good average for this time of year.
okay, so I think we have a perceived equity issue that everybody's talking about when it comes to the differential between, household, garden furniture and whatnot. And I can understand that this is where it seems like this is the direction where everybody is going. I do want to say that it is essential to, when you haul out your boat and you've got all this mung on the bottom of your boat, it's corrosive, and if it hangs on for the next year, it's not going to come off. It's just not going to drop off. And so it's really a necessity. And boat engines need to be flushed out and winterized. Otherwise, they'll crack, they'll freeze up and everything. So these are really essential things that I feel are important. But I can understand that, and if Tom feels comfortable with this, then I'm fine with the idea of Dean's suggestion to add the additional water usage, to be fair.
Thank you, Shereen, and as am I. I can get there. I think the folks that you need to power wash the bottom of a boat as it's hauled out, whether it's private or commercial. It's part of all. You have to maintain your boat. You can't get that stuff off in the springtime. It doesn't come off. So it's part of the maintenance of your boat. And if we're going to maintain outside furniture and or cars, if you will, coming off the beach, I think it's reasonable to say, okay, it's okay to use the water. So I can get there as well from a maintenance perspective of personal assets. And given Tom's weighing in, saying there's not a whole lot of impact, now that the rush of the summer is over and the pressure's off a little bit on water use, I'm willing to lighten up a little bit. Mr. Shell wants to speak again, I think.
I think we've fly-specked enough out of the pepper, and I think we can get where we're all saying if we just take D and limit D to Friday through Sunday, so that people can, Monday through Thursday, they can do the things that are in D. Friday through Sunday, they can't. And I think that pretty much addresses what everybody's talking about, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, and you're going to hear more taking flies and peppers together, but here you go, Corey, go ahead.
Well, this is where I was struggling with my
Right.
comment to Tom about what days of concern and whatever. Obviously, peak is, the higher numbers were the weekends, but they were not of massive concern. That's why I was trying to understand, because there are people who are going to start shutting down their properties, and they're going to be doing it on the weekends. Some people who are just down for the weekend, but they own a property, they come down here. That is the reality of it. I mean, and that's why I was trying to get my head wrapped around, because you do have people who do rent houses, and sometimes they use them themselves during the summer too, but they will come down on the weekends to start winterizing and closing up their houses. So just putting the facts out there and let the board kind of discuss as appropriate. But some of this activity, especially people going out on the beaches and coming off washing their vehicles, they're going to want to do it. I'm just putting simple, pure facts out on the table. I understand what you're saying completely, but this is the facts that we gotta discuss. So sorry for that.
Mr. Nicastro.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume we're going to hear from the public, too. I guess I was going to come at the solution a little differently from Mr. Shell. I was going to suggest that, first of all, we adopt all the amendments that Dr. Duncanson has put forward. And with respect to the Conservation Commission, unless it's a problem, Bob, I would suggest that that be a temporary rather than a permanent fix. And then I would suggest that in paragraph 1D, we strike the phrase personal vehicles, and then insert in paragraph 3 exceptions for washing of personal vehicles and washing of outdoor furniture. And that would allow the public the flexibility to hopefully exercise some reasonable discretion as when they do it. And I would just say, sort of introductorily, that we're all trying to achieve some equitableness in this, and we've been adjusting this periodically. We're never going to get a one-to-one correspondence because there's so many complications here, and hopefully when the Water and Sewer Committee takes a look at this longer term, they're going to come back to us with a recommendation that will include a scale of, depending on what level of drought we're in, of measures that will go into effect automatically once the board approves that scale. But I think for the time being, we're trying to get to an equitable point and making adjustments. But that's what I would suggest. I think that might address the point that Corey was making. And I understand where Mike's coming from based on what Tom was saying, but and I'm willing to put that forward.
Is that a motion?
I'll offer that as a motion.
Okay, and
I'll second it.
I have one addition I would like to add. Well, I have one change I would like to at least suggest, and not to get too deep here, but outdoor watering, and we've heard this from Ms. Gibbs and others, but midnight to 7 a.m., I get up early, and 6:30 is about the earliest you can go outside without tripping over yourself. So, and as the sun rises later and later in the day, I think stretching that out to 7:30 or even 8 o'clock is reasonable. I think that's reasonable. I was out at 6:30 this morning, and it was pretty dark, so I think she makes a good point. So I would include that in your motion.
7:30?
I would say 7:30. I would even say 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I would say 8 o'clock.
I'll accept that that's an amendment you're making, and
Yes.
I'll accept that amendment. I'll second it.
Second? Okay, good. Okay, so let's round the horn here. Mr. Nicastro, what say you?
Did you want to hear from the public?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if there's anybody that wants to speak, but.
I have a guest with a hand up.
Yes, it's Elaine Gibbs.
Hi, Elaine.
Just to throw an idea out here, the whole idea of winterizing is for a period certain. It's going to be over the next 4 to 6 weeks when everybody's shutting down the houses. And as I think Corey and Dean have said, some people come in on the weekends to do it, other people during the week. I think it's a self-equalizing thing. If you just say for the next 6 weeks, people can pick the time that works for them, weather permitting, because they can't do it in the rain, rather than saying 5 to 9 because it's going to be dark. And then they can go out and winterize their homes as they see fit for a couple hours a day. Some people will do it on the weekend, some people will do it during the week. Rather than saying Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I think that is where you show the peaks. If you spread it over the week for the next 6 weeks, let people pick their time. Nobody's going to abuse it. And I would suggest that that not doing it for homes is just as corrosive and damaging to property. So that if we have that window, and the boat yards aren't restricted to 5 to 9. They're going to be doing it all day. So if everybody just goes out and gets it all done, it's not an ongoing process. Once it's done, it's done. I think that would go a long way to get everybody buttoned down for the winter with no strain on any of the wells.
Okay.
And I do have one other point. I sent it to you folks. I don't know if you saw it. I think it's really important that the town follow the rules. On Friday, DPW was watering bushes down at Oyster Pond with a hose at 11:30, right in front of the sign that said, this is, we're under a water ban. I think that is not for health and safety. I don't see why they were doing that. They weren't shutting down the bathrooms there, but they were watering. And people are driving by going, we can't water. It's not 5 o'clock, but the town was. So I would urge the town to follow the same rules. And
Okay.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Any further modifications to the motion? Mr. Metters has his hand up.
Just in our motion, do we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Is that part of the formal motion or not?
Well,
Just for clarification.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
and Bob can chime in. I was just looking at this with an eye to what Elaine Gibbs was asking. Paragraph 2 is the one that sets forth the time restrictions, but I'm not sure that applies to the exceptions in paragraph 3. Is that correct, Bob? For example, let's assume we made no changes at all, and the document is in place as it is now, stays in place. So you have this protocol that says certain things are prohibited, absolutely prohibited. There's 4 of them. Then it says, but you can outdoor water during these days and times. And then paragraph 3 says, exceptions to the restrictions include health and safety and so forth. In addition, and then you're proposing to add something, but doesn't that mean that if you fall under an exception for health and safety, you can water anytime?
Right. The items that are listed as exceptions under paragraph 3 would not be subject to the restrictions in paragraph 2.
Right.
Okay, so my motion to respond to Mr. Metters, my motion puts the outdoor furniture and the motor vehicles in paragraph
Yep.
3 as exceptions, so they would not be subject to the time constraints of paragraph 2.
Okay.
I think that addresses.
It does be right, because if I'm reading the board correctly, reading where I'm going, I think we're going to allow as much reasonable flexibility as possible,
Yeah.
not limiting a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a 6-week period, because we're going to have this on our agenda every week, and if we
Right.
need to adjust it, we can adjust it on a weekly
If it's
basis,
abused,
right then
we
and
can
there.
come back and-
Exactly. Okay, I just wanted to be clear on what we're putting forth.
So can we summarize what we've done?
Okay.
What the motion is, please?
Let me go through it because I was going to ask this very question just to make sure that I had it correct.
Okay,
So right now, paragraph 1 talks about prohibitions. We are retaining item A, B, C. Based on the conversation that I'm hearing, we are getting we're retaining D, but putting the period right after the, where it says sidewalks, patios, driveways, siding. In parentheses, there would be a period there. And then we're getting rid of all the rest of that paragraph. We're changing paragraph 2 to read midnight to 8 a.m.
Yep.
as one of the allowable time periods. It's not clear whether you're going to retain the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or get rid of that. Paragraph 3 is staying the same as in the red line, but we are adding an item C, washing of personal vehicles and outdoor furniture is now an exception. So that would be allowed.
And
So I just one comment, if I might. I do believe that the Monday, Wednesday, Friday stays in place with the different hours. That's my understanding.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
That-
But you're
okay, that's
also-
what I was hearing as well.
The only thing that you didn't mention just now, Bob, is that, is the Conservation Commission mitigation.
Oh, yes, sorry.
You're gonna put that under 3?
I'll add that into
Under-
item 3 as well, yes.
And that'll be a temporary.
Dana,
Okay.
that was in your motion.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the motion, and it was seconded by, I think Shireen seconded it.
Okay, here we go. Mr.
When you say,
I'm sorry,
just for
sorry.
clarification,
comment.
Mr. Nicastro, when you say temporary, are you referring to temporary in terms of a time period for the conservation one, or a temporary irrigation system?
I was meaning to reflect whatever you were proposing as the alternative, so if I misunderstood what you sent around earlier to this afternoon, when you were using the word temporary, what were you referring to?
Generally, these mitigation plantings are watered by a temporary above-ground irrigation system.
So do we want, I'm flexible on this. I don't know whether we want to say, whether we need to say temporary, understanding that it's going to be temporary anyway as a practical matter. Do we need to have that language in there?
I don't think you need to, because generally that is a requirement in the order of conditions from the Conservation Commission that the irrigation system be above ground and temporary.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to remove that word, and hopefully Select Board Member Davis will agree to that.
Yes, I'm fine with that.
And that's the motion. And I think you have another public comment.
Thank you. We do another public comment. I'm going to go to Mr. Shell and Mr. Metters, and then to Carolyn, who has her hand up.
Just a clarification, Bob, I thought I heard you say in item D that you put a period after the close of the paren there.
Yes.
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 That takes personal vehicles entirely out of the restrictions. Is that the
Yes,
intention here?
because Mr. Nicastro moved the personal vehicles under paragraph 3 as being allowed.
Right, but those are exceptions to restrictions, and now we don't have a restriction.
Right, there would be no restriction on the washing of personal vehicles.
Okay.
It's an exception, Mr. Chairman, it's an exception to
I'm-
number 2 also, Mike.
It's a hard surface.
Well, okay. All right, I'll,
You good?
it's okay.
Okay, Mr. Metters.
Sorry to split hairs, but one quick question. On 1D, when we prohibit washing of hard surfaces, specifically patios and driveways, where do we think the patio furniture is going to be washed on? So by default, if you're washing your furniture,
grass.
no, if you're washing your furniture, you can wash your patio or your porch or your whatever. So I'm just fast forwarding the emails and comments that are going to be posted after this discussion. So that's just my observation. Obviously, you know, secondary washing when you wash your patio furniture will probably be acceptable, but
I think it's going to
just
be,
throwing it out there.
it's going to be done on dead grass, Corey. Okay. Carolyn.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I just want to comment that you guys are doing a great job. This is a very complicated and difficult topic to discuss. There's a lot of different opinions and everything. So I'm going to throw one more out there. And I look at this statement, which I did prepare this time, as for something to look forward in the future. I know that you're dealing with all the little details now, but anyways, one of the biggest issues we're currently dealing with is how we're going to have sustainable communities that are in harmony with the environment. Choices will have to be made, and past behaviors and expectations need to be reevaluated. There are a lot of conversations about cleaning cars or boats or lawn furniture, but let's talk about the real issues with excessive watering. The environmental crisis is and will continue to be an exponential factor and all other sectors of our society. We know this. We also know what's good and what's bad for the environment. What we lack is the courage and the will to recognize our responsibilities and our obligations to modify our own behavior. We know that when we put chemicals on our lawns, they seep into the aquifer. We know lawns require an excessive amount of watering, water that we're running out of. We know that all the cumulative acreage of private lawns decreases the biodiversity that is essential for a sustainable ecosystem. People all over the planet are facing epic climate disasters. In our own country, we've experienced extreme temperatures, droughts, fires, flooding, and mudslides. In our own state, we've had a severe drought. How is it possible to argue that simply because you have private access to a limited resource, you should be allowed to use it excessively? Choosing to satisfy a desire to have a particular aesthetic or a veneer of prestige over the future health of the planet is reprehensible. Chemicals and excessive watering on private lawns and golf courses with or without irrigation systems should be considered a threat to public health. Residents already spend a lot of money to have professional landscapers manage their property. There is no reason that they can't be employed to create landscapes that are beneficial to the environment. If we want to keep golf courses, we should insist that they go 100% organic, just like they've done in Martha's Vineyard. Change can be difficult, but it's inevitable. All we can do is try to navigate our way to tomorrow. When future generations look at pictures at this time, they will notice all the lawns and wonder how they could have wasted all that water on maintaining a toxic landscape. And they will ask, didn't they know? And the answer is yes. Yes, we know. We simply don't care enough to change our behavior. We've all heard of the greatest generation. I'm just wondering if we might be remembered as the most selfish generation, wasting all these resources. Thank you.
Okay, Carolyn, very interesting comments. Appreciate that. You know, we are seeing the trees, but we're trying to be mindful of the forest. But, you know, there was no dress rehearsal kind of for this, so we appreciate your kind comment about our working through the issues and working through the nuances and the kind of the details. But we always have to be mindful of the forest and what we're trying to accomplish here overall, absolutely. So I certainly appreciate your comments, and very well said. So we have a comment out there, Mr. Duncanson. And I see.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment. We've spoken a lot about the reason why a lot of this took place, but just keep in mind, and this is really for everybody that's listening at home, we are still in a level 3 critical drought on Cape Cod. Groundwater levels are continuing to drop. They are actually lower this week than they were when I showed the figure last week. And the state is still recommending for all communities that are in that level 3 that all unnecessary water use be banned. So hopefully people will take that to heart, and even with the somewhat loosening of some of these restrictions, people will really continue to use water judiciously, even if we are beyond our immediate crisis of being able to pump enough water. We are still in a drought condition. Thank you.
Yeah, very much appreciated, Bob. Dr. Bob, thank you. So I think we have a motion and a second. We haven't voted yet. Mr. Nicastro, you have your hand up.
This is a technical point. Is there something wrong with the audio tonight? I'm having trouble hearing. Can we
It's lower.
increase the volume?
It seems like it's a little lower.
The folks online, Ryan, seem to be a little low.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Okay, we done here? Carolyn, your hand's still up? Are you done?
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Okay. I don't see any other hands up, either here or virtually. We do have a motion and a second. I think we know what we're voting for. I will start with Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
And Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much for your patience and your input. Okay. Next item is any public comments on our business agenda. We have on our business agenda this evening, the sales on town property are Oktoberfest. Then we have our Summer Residence Advisory Committee report out by Jamie Meehan, the SRAC chair. Then we have a proposed county ARPA ordinance. I know Randy Potash is here. And I will allow comments on both the summer residents, or on all three of them, to be honest with you. So first up, we have Jen Allard and Amy Talaferro, I think, on the sales on town property for Oktoberfest, which is fun.
Are you going to do public comments on business agenda items?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I am.
I have to recuse myself from this item.
But from this one, okay, all right. Do you need to leave the dais? This is Oktoberfest.
This is one of the business items, Jeff.
Okay. Okay. So I'll allow public comment.
Oh, you're going to allow.
I'm going to allow it, yeah. Anybody wants to weigh in on Oktoberfest? Go ahead.
No?
Jen, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So the Chatham Chamber of Commerce and Merchants Association are putting on Oktoberfest again this year, Saturday, October 22nd. And it's in Kate Gould Park. And so we are here to request use of the town property, the parking lot at Chatham Bars Ave is one of the first requests we have. We have both food stands, local vendors, local restaurants, and food trucks who have applied to participate in the parking lot, and local goods vendors as well. We also have nonprofits and other businesses who will be in the park. In addition to that, we have a one-day special request for an alcohol permit. We have Devil's Purse for the last several years has done a beer garden in the parking lot. And we're also requesting an entertainment permit for that same location to have music from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the bandstand of Kate Gould Park. That's been the request for the last several years. New this year, we'd like to ask the board's permission to expand Oktoberfest a little bit into the town hall parking lot. And what we're proposing, I've been in touch with the Chatham Police Department and Lieutenant Goddard. We're proposing blocking off part of the parking lot to put additional vendors, 2 additional food vendors, and then some other goods and nonprofit vendors. We've been, Oktoberfest has been growing over the last, I think it's 10 years, more than 10 years.
Yeah, it's a while.
More than 10 years, and we have a lot of interest from local businesses that would like to participate, and we also have the interest of spreading folks throughout town a little bit, hoping to, encourage shopping and dining throughout Chatham.
Okay, Jen. Amy, anything?
She's covered it.
Okay, she has. It's a great event. The only change this year, really, from your past requests is the use of the town parking lot.
Yes.
And just, can you describe what you'd like to use, please?
Sure.
Just briefly.
So in the town hall parking lot, what we have proposed is making entrance from Main Street a one-way entrance. And we would be blocking off the parking spaces that are closest to the Main Street, the row of parking that is parallel to Main Street, and the row across from that to allow space for cars to be able to park on the second section of that row. I think I put a diagram in your packet. So that would be barricaded off in conjunction with the Chatham Police Department. We'd have a police detail there, and we would have additional vendors there. So there still would be parking in that parking lot. We're requesting 18 spaces be blocked off.
Mm-hmm. And mobile food vendors there and elsewhere?
Yeah, so our goal is to really get people moving around, and so we would put 2 mobile food vendors in that location. The rest of the vendors would be some nonprofit organizations that would like to have space at the event, and some goods vendors as well. And then the rest of the mobile food vendors would be in the Chatham Bars Ave parking lot.
Right, okay. Any other questions from the select board for the Oktoberfest event? Okay. Any questions anywhere? Okay. Motion. Mr. Shell.
Yeah, just the suggestion is, I think, 4 or 5 separate motions. Do you want to do these as individual motions, or do you want to read them all and vote on them all at once?
We read them all and vote them all at once, unless
Okay.
somebody has a specific motion they would be in disagreement.
Then I'll be happy to make a motion or motions. And I'll interpret the first one to include the request to block off the Chatham Bars Avenue parking lot. And so I move to grant a special one-day liquor license to Jennifer Allard on behalf of the Chatham Chamber of Commerce and Merchants Association for Saturday, October 22, 2022, from 11 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. for service at the Chatham Bars Avenue parking lot, and to further approve the outdoor sale of goods and sales on town property and grant permission to possess, consume alcohol on town property as associated with this permit. I further move to grant a one-day entertainment permit to Jennifer Allard on behalf of the Chatham Chamber of Commerce and Merchants Association for Saturday, October 22, 2022, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Kate Gould Park Bandstand for live outdoor amplified music. I further move to grant permission for the outdoor sale of goods and sales on town property for the Town of Office parking lot from 10:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And that concludes my motion.
Second. Thank you. Discussion. Vote. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
The chair says aye as well. Have fun.
Thank you. Hope to see you there.
Thanks for your hard work.
Thanks.
Welcome back, Ms. Davis.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the report out by the Summer Residence Advisory Committee. This evening, we have Jamie Meehan, our Summer Residence Advisory Committee Chair, to bring the report. They've been meeting assiduously all summer, I believe once a week, at least once a week, if not in other committees and subcommittees.
You're being kind, once a week.
Yeah. Anyway, Jamie, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Select Board. Good evening. We'd like to give a little bit of background on the Summer Residence Advisory Committee. Our mission statement is to give summer residents a voice, give the Select Board the benefit of information and views, give fresh outlooks to the town, and take a position and make a case for or against town matters. As hopefully you'll see in a second, SRAC is the James Brown of Chatham. We're the hardest working committee in Chatham. I'm biased. I don't know the other committees, no disrespect to the 40-plus committees. I do know the Summer Residence Advisory Committee, and the skill set, including the analytical, financial, and legal backgrounds, the dedication and passion on this committee is off the charts. In my 8 years on the committee, we've had more meetings, field trips, produced more research and position papers than any other year. And that's not attributed to me as the chair. It's attributable to my predecessors and the members of the committee that have continued this dedication. In addition to hearing from the town manager, finance director, finance committee chair, and select board liaison, we heard from the Chamber of Commerce, Council on Aging, and Affordable Housing staff. We had field trips to the wastewater treatment plant. And if Dr. Bob is still on the line, every voter in Chatham should take a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. It's unbelievable. I know Dr. Bob didn't sign up to be a tour director, but he does a fabulous job, and it's a very impressive facility, and it's good to see where your tax money is going. We saw firsthand the need for a new senior center facility, and with the rebranding, we're probably going to have to rename our subcommittee that's been working on this effort. And we also visited the Fishermen's Alliance in an effort to learn more about the culture here in Chatham. The heart of what SRAC does as far as looking into town issues is done through 7 subcommittees. Using this subcommittee structure, we're able to take a position and make a case for or against town matters. The 7 subcommittees that allowed us to really dive deep into matters were financial, Council on Aging, affordable housing, water irrigation, waterways, communications, and the summer town meeting, which, by the way, we hosted the 76th annual summer town meeting back in August. want to step back, the mission statement, what we try to do, those four things, we really try to keep it front and center. We've gone as far as affixing those four issues on the back of our nameplates. So every time we speak, and hopefully we speak into the mic, we can't help but see the mission statement on the back of our nameplate. And so what we've tried to do is make sure that every comment, every position paper is consistent with that mission statement. Two subcommittees that I want to highlight are the Financial Subcommittee, which really was devoted almost exclusively to the residential tax exemption issue, and the Council on Aging Subcommittee. In your packet, you have our position papers on each of these two issues, along with water, irrigation systems, and waterways. With respect to the Council on Aging, SRAC recommends a 6,500 square foot addition on the west side of the community center. And with respect to the residential tax exemption, SRAC, along with the Finance Committee, Board of Assessors, and others, opposes a residential tax exemption. In closing, I'm honored to be the chair of this outstanding committee, and I look forward to working closely with the Select Board in carrying out our mission. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide additional color on any of these issues.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Thank
A report, very exhaustive report that you were handed out to us, covering residential tax exemption, water, private well use, Council on Aging, et cetera. So you guys have worked really hard this year, this summer, I should say, and the fact that you have your mission statement on the back of your nameplates is fairly impressive. Questions for Jamie based upon the report he presented this evening? Mr. Nicastro's hand is up, and I will entertain comments from the public if they so desire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jamie, is your committee likely to have meetings in the off-season, since they are now permitted under the governor's executive order?
Yes,
legislature.
I think that will be the case. We've already talked about having a couple of remote meetings around the budget process and as things evolve over the course of the winter, yes.
Okay, that was my only question. I don't have any substantive comments on your report. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for your work and your committee's work.
Thank you.
Comments? Nothing? Barbara Siegel would like to speak. Yes, please, Barbara. Yeah.
Barbara Siegel, I'm Vice Chair of the Council of Aging Board of Directors. My only question is how you arrived at the figure of 6,500 square feet as the need for a senior center.
One of our members, Joel Rotner, who's the immediate chair, past chair, was the chair of the Council on Aging Subcommittee, but he wrote a position paper on the recommendation of 6,500 square feet. And if you'll indulge with me just for a second, I'll try to retrieve that. Okay, here we go. Okay, 6,500 square foot addition on the west side of the community center. That was in the feasibility study, I believe, that was presented about a month ago. So So the 6,500 square foot addition was felt like by the Community Services Director that it was sufficient for a senior center facility in Chatham, except for the fact that it does not include space for supporting daycare. So the 6,500 square foot space was on the plans drawn out by the architect and the project manager. If that answers your question.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Jamie. Shireen, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Jamie, for coming in and making your presentation.
Sure.
You mentioned that you had spoken with nonprofits like the Fishermen's Alliance to get a better understanding of the culture.
Yes.
I was wondering if you had spoken with anybody from the Alliance to Preserve Cape Cod, who has been doing a lot of work around water conservation, wastewater projects, and whatnot. Andrew Gottlieb is probably one of the more respected members of Cape Cod when it comes to understanding the impact of the environment, especially when it comes to water usage and whatnot.
We did not, but we're certainly open to that. We did speak with the Energy and Climate Committee.
Mm-hmm.
They made a presentation to us, and we also had Cape Light Compact set up a booth at our Summertown meeting. So environmental concerns is gaining traction with the committee, and it wouldn't surprise me to see some collaboration with that committee that you're referring to next year.
Well, it's a private nonprofit on Cape Cod, and it's very well regarded as far as what it does.
We would be open to collaborating with them.
and I guess, when you had talked about the irrigations and encouraging the use of having people hook up to their wells and use irrigation systems in that respect, did you have conversations did TRAC have conversations about water conservation and usage in the context of encouraging second homeowners to be diligent in conserving water at all, or was that part of this of your finding studies or
No, we didn't
whatever?
have direct surveys like that. However, one of our subcommittees, communications, and we made a big effort in trying to get a pulse on what summer residents want us to look at, and we also want to take a pulse as to what their concerns are. So it wouldn't surprise me to see us make a bigger effort in that regard. Mainly through the use of social media that the town would allow us to do. There is a link on our site for anybody, whether it's summer residents or not, to express questions, concerns, issues that they have, but we want to go further than that using social media platforms.
Yeah, I was wondering how you guys reach out to second homeowners in the community to engage them into conversations. I'm sure there's some folks that are really dedicated and are community conscious, have a community conscious like your group does. But imagine there's a lot of people that just are here and they're not engaging. And I just didn't know if there was some sort of educational component you've ever considered in your outreach.
We have. To be frank with you, it's been frustrating.
Yeah.
We conduct our meetings every week, and we're lucky to get one person in the gallery.
I understand that you've got a short window of meetings and a lot on your plate or take on. There's one thing that I wanted to just speak to, and maybe it can get on your lens or the Shrac's lens, radar, and it's in respect to, community sustainability. And, I was reading this report from Vail, Colorado, was having a lot of growing pains similar to what Chatham does. And part of it it kind of resonated with me a little bit, and I just wanted to mention it, and I'll send you where I cited this because I think it's a really kind of an interesting talk about sustainable economies when you have second homeowners. And it's short, if you don't mind. Traditionally, residential homes in their neighborhoods have provided workers with decent homes and adequate community services. However, second homeowners are different in that they are not a resident, but an industry creating a demand for workers. Secondly, second homeowners drive up property values, including residential housing for workers. Because of this, it becomes especially important for people like us, I'm paraphrasing here, and community planners to understand and estimate the secondary effects of second homes on the town's economy and sustainability. With this information, policies can be developed by us to provide for social needs of our citizens with the development and the influence of growth in different economic drivers. We personally spend a lot of money on services, with the summer dynamics, and we see in the winter a lot of need for social services. So you see that we have this sort of like issue around the lack of housing and seasonal jobs, and the cost of living here is quite, can be quite daunting for some folks. We did adopt recommendations from the Chatham 365 Task Force that did include the residential tax exemption as a recommendation. We want to see that this town has a sustainable economy, and over time, if we don't, we're obviously going to have a whole different kind of town. I'm not saying it's your fault. I mean, you have every right to live in the town with all of us. That's not it. It's the bigger picture that we have to look at as select board members and understand where our year-round sustainability is. And I was wondering if you guys have ever really said, well, let's take this on from that lens. Let's see what we have, like our group, our select board has looked at, community sustainability through the lens of a year-round, the year-round people. And I was wondering if you guys ever thought about that in those, I mean.
Maybe not in the way that you're describing, but let me ask you a question.
Sure.
That, you mentioned that this 365 ad hoc committee. What kind of input did that committee ever solicit from the Summer Residence Advisory Committee?
They had invited, they had through 2 public forums, they had a survey, and it did take place obviously throughout a year. It was a year event. I'm not sure why it wasn't part of your radar. A lot of stakeholders were invited to sort of testify to the committee and then participate in public forums. And that was in 2019, so that was a while back.
Sure.
And they did make the recommendations. They're on our the town's website. And it just talks about community vibrancy and talks about some of the zoning things very similar to some of the recommendations you guys have made with housing. I mean, there's core things that are aligning with what they're saying and you're saying. And I'm just wondering if this is something that you guys have looked at through your radar.
No, I'll just make a couple of points with respect to that. You mentioned the residential tax exemption. So, our work shows that seasonal residents pay about 65% of the taxes. And so the objection always comes up, well, to support a population of 30,000 plus during the season, we have to build these big fire stations and so on and so forth. Well, who finances those fire stations? 65% of it comes from the summer residents, and they're not around during the rest of the year. Meanwhile, the town gets to enjoy a large fire station. So that's kind of our counterpoint, and it seems like this 365 committee doesn't fully capture the summer residents' point of view. Not only was there not any representation on that committee from summer residents, but some of the recommendations were not consistent with what our viewpoint is.
So when I not trying to get into a back and forth here, but, when I talked about the idea that, we have, I understand that you are talking about the percentage of what you are, paying in taxes in relationship to the year-round resident. We have a lot of extra services, yes, but we also have a lot of extra onus around that as well. And I'm trying to identify that as it's just not all benefit. It's just not all just benefit. There is a downside to the idea that there's, high cost of living to live here and other reasons because, it's such a sought after place to live. I mean, we're not the only ones. I mean, I was reading something about, Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire and how they're dealing with the same kind of stuff. These are all things that we, as year-rounders are saying, well, is there a way that everybody can sort of be looking at it and finding those commonalities? And I think that 365, as I said, 365 had common interests as you did in working on the housing and zoning issues. This might be the one that just splits the difference. But I just wanted to have you aware of it and to keep it on, to have it on your radar.
Thank you. Certainly, Mike, let me introduce Mike Waters. He's on the committee. He did most of the heavy lifting on the residential tax exemption, so
heavy lifting.
He's more qualified to speak on that than me.
I just wanted to respond to some of your questions to see if I could give you some more information. You talked about how we decided what we looked at, whether we looked at water conservation. We do depend upon the members of the committee to keep their ear to the ground in the community. But we also start our meetings with a representative of the select board and the town manager and the finance manager and the finance committee chair. And we are always asking them if they have any suggestions for us as to what we ought to be looking at, something that we can do to be helpful. And we'll continue that. And I hope you'll keep it in mind if you have something you think it would be useful for us to explore. We're very happy to do that. You asked some questions about communication. We have a few new members that are chosen by you, and these people have been very good additions this year. They have a lot of knowledge about communication and use of various networking devices. So Jamie established a communications committee. Part of what they are doing is looking into things like Facebook and other methods of email chains and ways to improve our communication with the summer residents in general. So we have that in mind, and we're trying to address it. And you also asked whether or not we had looked at the question of the resiliency, year-round resiliency of the community from the point of view of the people who are here all year. And I would suggest to you that that is the major thrust of our report on two subjects. One, the residential exemption, and two, affordable housing, and to some extent, the treatment of seniors. We spent a lot of time on this issue, not just coming at it from the point of view of the expense that has to be paid a lot by the summer residents, but coming at it from the point of view of what will be effective to deal with this problem. We recognize the problem. We think that the way the and I think it evolved out of the 365 committee. The way the town approached it, talking about keeping the school here, the elementary school, talking about trying to get new industry into Chatham that would employ people. That was injured by the COVID pandemic, but it still remains one of the most important things that you can do, and we support it completely. And when we look at housing, the market will determine the price of houses. There's not a lot that any of us can do about that. It's unsatisfactory to everybody that doesn't own a house. And when you own a house for the summer or year-round, you're getting the benefit of it. So affordable housing struck us as the most important way. And one of our members is involved as a developer in San Francisco and is in this area. He's presented plans. Frankly, the town meeting has resisted for over a period of a few years in really taking the steps necessary to put together a plan and approve an area for affordable housing. But now you're on the cusp of getting that done. And we think, and we've supported that that's the best way that you can do anything. But the residential exemption will hurt many of the year-round residents, a great many of them, and it will injure rentals, which is where the people you're concerned about have to live. It may even injure the ADUs. I don't know how they're going to be treated under that, but we'll try and take a look at that before you, before you have your meeting. I've taken a lot of your time, and I apologize. I just want to finish with one thought. When you meet in the winter and you want to address this, we'd appreciate it if you'd keep in mind that it's really hard for us to get together and confer and present you with something. So keep in mind in your schedule giving us an opportunity to be heard if you carry this on in the winter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and
wanna
Sharina,
follow
I think wants to
Yeah,
have
I really
a quick
appreciate
response here,
that,
but-
Michael. I do want to say, we do make requests of committees all the time to, what we'd like to see them working on, and maybe we have a future agenda item where we discuss what we'd like to see Shrek come back with for us.
Yeah, I just want to comment to that point. Jill and I went early on. I think we were the first folks and we teed up affordable housing and water and all the major issues that face the town and the elementary school, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, we teed up all the issues that, and I was frankly a little surprised that we didn't see something on affordable housing in the package this evening. Now, I know Phil well. I've had many discussions with Phil, really value his input. I've read all about his jousting with the windmills out on the West Coast, and really, we can learn a lot from that. He's an invaluable member of your committee, and frankly, an invaluable member of our entire community. Yeah. So he's great.
If I
I've
may,
had a lot of offline conversations with Phil as well, and he's delightful, and he's really insightful.
If I may just comment on why we didn't go into detail position paper. So in asking Phil, he wanted the position paper that he issued last year to stand and be carried over for this year. So he's had numerous conversations with Katie and your new hires, and is pleased with the progress that's going on. But his position is action.
Yeah, no,
I know yours is too.
I had quite a conversation with him just this summer as well. But anyway, thank you, Shereen. I'm going to go to Mike and then to Dean. Mike, go ahead. Yep, thanks.
Yeah, just a comment of my own. I appreciate your involvement. It's easy to understand why people who are summer residents would like to come here and spend 3 months and not worry about too much of anything other than getting away from what they're getting away from. I do think, and I'm going to focus on a couple of different areas. There are some things in your report that I fully understand and agree with, and there are some that I think are, let's say, preliminary. And I say preliminary because we haven't got to a point where we are prepared to say, and I'm specifically talking about the Council on Aging, the new building, the senior center, and I'm also talking about your comments on water conservation. I understand your position, but we haven't really got to a point where we've come to a conclusion about what, on a broader basis, we think is appropriate to do. Your input in this report is, at least to me, is helpful. But to come back to the senior center, I think what we heard from the consultants was very much preliminary. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about where to go from there. My only comment to you is I hope you will have an open mind with respect to that development as we go through it between now and, let's say, next summer or next May. And because I think, some of the data that you were working with and information that you were working with, including the consultant's report that we all sat here and listened to, was responsive more to a question that was asked rather than a recommendation from them. And as to size, which was the question that Barbara asked you, I think the views of the first of all, the Council on Aging Board are worthy of serious consideration, and I think that there are other sources of views on that preliminary, which are worthy also of consideration. So I just hope you'll keep an open mind on that as we develop that conversation.
Very much so. We'll intend to have another subcommittee next year on the Council on Aging. And so what, I'm sorry Joel Rotner's not here because he was the author of the position paper, but his take was mostly from a parking standpoint. The town-owned parking next to the Red Nun maybe wasn't considered at first glance, and that's what he wanted to make sure that everybody understood that that was available, and then in addition to building an addition on the west side of the community center. So that's where he was, his angle, but to the select board's point, if 1610 is back on the table, all bets are off, but.
Follow-up, Mr. Schultz?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
I appreciate that comment. I, to be honest with you, I wasn't clear why it didn't appear that the report, and if Mr. Rotner was the source of it, I'll give him credit for it, didn't seem to have much to say about the alternative of the reconstruction at the current site. And I don't want to get into a debate.
Sure.
I think there were a lot of things that were kind of open questions, and as I say, I'm making a case right now for keeping an open mind on all
think,
possibilities.
Yeah, very much so. And I think a couple of years ago, Mike, you can correct me, I think SRAC issued a position paper to rebuild at the current location. So I think that underscores the openness of our committee to exploring different sites, certainly.
I did speak to Joel about this, so maybe I can answer your question. We had originally recommended reconstructing it at the original site. I think what drove the report this year was a feeling of integrating it into the community center, an intergenerational mix, the opportunity to walk around town, that impressed him and the rest of that committee about that site being particularly attractive. I think that drove him.
Yeah, got it. Mr. Nacastro's had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several points. I wasn't planning to speak further, but since a number of items have been brought up, I will. And I just threw something off my screen that I didn't want to. With respect to the senior center, you know, I agree with what Mr. Shell was saying, that this is still a very fluid situation, and we're still analyzing. The Council on Aging, as I think is related in your report, their board voted unanimously 2 weeks ago to reject the community center. And with respect to the argument about intergenerational, and we've heard this before, I guess that argument, to use language you're familiar with, Mike, has been asked and answered, I think, by the community. I think, anyway. I always liked your report on 193 Stony Hill Road, the current location. There are some challenges there which were laid out in the recent feasibility study by Mr. Bargman with respect to parking, and also the lack of an opportunity to expand, particularly if you wanted to put adult daycare. But I had a conversation with Phil Richardson recently, and I said, you need to push back on this parking argument, because I don't think necessarily that the town should be limited by the formula that Mr. Bargman has put forward, that parking is based on square footage of the building versus the use of the building. And there may be an opportunity to put as many as 49 or 50 parking spaces there on land that is exclusively right now owned by the town, without having to deal with the condominium people. And I'm not advocating for 193. We haven't heard from even the Council on Aging as to where they would like to go. But there are also some concerns about the community center from the standpoint of the Park and Recs Commission, because I don't think they want it there. And that doesn't mean that the Council and Senior Center, or the Center for Adult, I got it right, Chatham Center for Adult Living, wouldn't continue to use the community center for exercise and other types of programs, even on an expanded basis. So that's my comment on that. With respect to the water usage and private wells section of your report, as you know, I think, this board has referred very globally to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, an examination of all the water issues in town. I would encourage you to send your report to them for their information. I want to say something about the comments that Shireen made, and I attended the meeting of the Cape and Islands Leadership Association, which Shireen is the president of, back in at the Open Cape, One Cape. Is it One Cape? One Cape. And there was a presentation from by someone from Lake Tahoe, and the issues they're dealing with on sustainability. And I respect everything Shireen said. I'm sorry. But you know, I think I would draw a distinction between the impact that the seasonal homeowner has on this town versus the visitors who come in, teeming the downtown area each summer. They put a huge strain on the town. They're here for a day, or they're here for a week. They're day trippers, or they're renters. That's a big difference, and we see it in the water usage reports. When they're gone, the water usage goes down. So they don't have a permanent stake in the town. We welcome them. The merchants love them. But maybe we're at the point of oversaturation with that. That's a point that doesn't originate with me. That was made by a member of the Parking Solutions Working Group. We just spent in excess of $1 million. What was it, a couple million we spent on the deck? that doesn't benefit the fishermen necessarily. We did add some features to it. And we give them free parking all over town, except in one lot. I don't want to go on a tear about that, but you know what I think about paid parking. We're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars that we could get by charging these people, and the merchants don't want it because they think it's going to discourage people from coming. Well, take a look at the other towns in Massachusetts that are on the seacoast that charge for parking. They're not losing visitors. So I draw that distinction. And one last comment about Chatham 365. I respect the work they did. They met multiple times. They had some good people on it. We heard their recommendations. We processed their recommendations, and we dissolved the task force. They're no longer in existence as a task force of this town. We have their report. We can look at their recommendations to the extent we haven't adopted some of them, one of which is the residential tax exemption. And following our discussion about that issue 2 weeks ago, I received a phone call and an email from Peter Kokolas, who says, yes, that was included as a recommendation, but the detail in the explanation was that the select board needed to evaluate it, to study the pros and cons of it. So I think that has to be added as a complement to what Shireen was saying. I'm not here to debate the 360, the RTE. Everybody in this town knows what I think of the RTE because I wrote a letter to the Chronicle that was published last week. And I am going to continue to fight it. And I hope that the summer residents continue to fight it and be vocal about it and visible about it, because I think there have been some times when you haven't been. But that's my feeling about that particular issue. So those are my comments. I continue to respect the work that you do. And I think it's a great contribution to the town and to our consideration of the various issues that come before us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Nacastro. And just to echo Select Board Member Nacastro's feelings about paid parking, I certainly echo them. I think you're on point on paid parking, exactly on point. And I look forward to the day when we do charge for parking in the town of Chatham, because I think we are leaving revenues on the table. I think folks will come anyway. And I just think it's a no-brainer. And I think we also, I'm going to miss you on the parking subcommittee, Mr. Nacastro. Your voice is a strong one and a good one. May or may not agree with him on residential tax exemption. We're going to do a lot more work there, and we're going to do a deeper dive, if you will, and still soliciting comment from friends and foes alike. So more to come there. But appreciate your efforts. It's been a good discussion this evening. I always welcome SRAC's very intelligent opinions. You have a great committee full of really bright people and dedicated people and people that truly love the town of Chatham, which is what we all do. So.
Can I just make one comment about Mr. Nacastro's? Surprisingly, it's not about residential tax exemption, but it's about COA needs assessment. And I know they did a extensive needs assessment many years ago. And to Shireen's point about getting a pulse of summer residents, one of our own members made a comment that wouldn't it be nice to have an elderly guest or relative that's visiting them be able to go to a senior center, adult daycare, while they can go off, the younger relatives go off to wherever, Provincetown or whatever. My point is that because of demographics and because of elderly guests, the need for a senior center is probably greater than what this needs assessment revealed 6-7 years ago. And I'm sure, as all of you have, we had an opportunity to visit firsthand the senior center, and so that's front in mind as far as continuing to work on that next year.
Good. Well, thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Mike.
You.
And I do have Carolyn McClellan has a hand up. Carolyn?
Yes, hello. Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. So again, I have a prepared statement. Climate change, global economics, and geopolitical volatility are all factors that impact not only the world, but also life here in Chatham. They define the challenges of our time. We can't stop them from happening, but we are obligated as current stewards of our town to mitigate their impact. The housing market is skyrocketing, and we are not only challenged to develop affordable housing, but also attainable housing. The town has recently made some significant efforts to increase our year-round housing. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, it will take time before any homes are actually realized. That's the nature of affordable housing. But we must remain committed and continue to look for opportunities that will lead to more housing and help us sustain a thriving local communities. These efforts should not be limited to actual housing development. The residential tax exemption should be considered as a tool to help us sustain our year-round community. When someone takes a traditional modest Cape or ranch home and transforms it into a multi-million-dollar vacation property, they permanently remove it from our year-round housing stock. This has an exponential impact on the sustainability of our local residents. The cost and cultural impact of dealing with the dramatic seasonal population strains our natural resources and our capacity to maintain our municipal services, a rising expense that locals have to struggle with. At one of the last meetings, it was said that the potential $700 savings isn't worth the trouble, but oddly enough, the $700 increase would be excessive. $700 might not draw someone to move in Chatham, but it might help someone to stay in Chatham, and it will certainly ease the burden of the rising cost of living here. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay. I don't think we have a vote. I think we accept the report, and thank you guys very much, and thanks, obviously, to the entire SRAC committee. And guys, very, very, very engaged. Really appreciate it. The next item on the agenda this evening is a proposed county ARPA ordinance 2224, and Randy Potash, our representative to the Assembly, is here to request our support on a letter that she has crafted. Please, Randy, please come up. Welcome, and thank you so much for your patience sitting through our discussion this evening. Welcome, Randy.
So the reason why I came actually is just to thank you for considering this. I think you all received a letter from our clerk, from Pat.
We did.
And it was from the clerk, but it was on behalf of the speaker, Pat Princey, and it basically just asked you to consider. It doesn't ask you to support. I'm asking you to support it, though.
Okay. Randy, if we might, there's been an awful lot of noise around this ARPA money, $40 million, and how it was divvied up, et cetera. But just this letter of support is addressing what issue that concerns you?
Okay, so the issue that concerns me is that John Oman from Dennis, we co-sponsored this proposed amendment to the ordinance that was originally passed back in, April. And that original ordinance provided a sum of money for each of the towns, and just so you know, Chatham was allocated somewhere in the vicinity of $350,000.
Yep.
Okay, so it's essentially population-based. And so what's happened since April is that 9 towns have not applied yet. And probably not by way of coincidence, they're the 9 smallest towns. And one of the reasons that county government even exists is because of the capacity concerns with smaller towns. And so I reached out to our town to see why we haven't applied yet, and it's absolutely that. The capacity, they haven't had time. And furthermore, Chatham is on the tack of best practice, the only town out of the 15 that is going to do a community outreach that I'm aware of. Now, other towns may be planning to do a community outreach, but I learned from Alex, finance director, that that's in the works, and that it's essentially going to be part and parcel of your budget summit and your budget plans. And so that hasn't been done yet. And so I find it really exceptional that Chatham thinks essentially that it's a no-brainer to do the community outreach, which is considered to be best practice. So that hasn't been done yet. But when it is done, and you do get to decide what this ordinance, amendment to the ordinance will do, if it's passed, is will allow more flexibility to any projects you want to do. I
So-
can be more granular if you
Yeah,
want.
I just want, just briefly, we don't need to beat it to death, but right now,
Okay.
the way it's written is that there's specific projects that you have to spend the money on.
Correct.
What you're asking these towns to get together on and express the support is you want to broaden and be more flexible with respect to the use of
broaden
the
your
monies.
horizons when you do decide. And so I can give you one example, probably will make it easier for you. It allows for revenue replacement, and the difference between what's there now and what would be there if it passed is, for example, right now, you can get an ambulance, but you can't get a fire truck or a police vehicle, because ambulances fall under health, and this ordinance would allow for the full array of government services within the bounds of our.
Thank you
How's
very
that?
much. Thank you, that's exactly what, okay. Mr. Nicastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for putting this on the agenda. As I emailed you and the town manager, Randy contacted me last week about this. And this proposed amendment ordinance basically gives the towns more flexibility on how to spend this money. So I think it's a good idea for us to support it, and I would propose that we, I would move, actually, that we send a letter of support. I think it has to go by tomorrow.
Correct.
Over the signature of the Chair of the Board of Selectmen in support of this amendment ordinance to the Assembly of Delegates, to Mr., your clerk, Owen Fletcher.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I think I get the sense of the committee, the select board. Mr. Metters.
No, Randy, thank you very much for bringing this forth, having a discussion with Selectman Nicastro and keeping this on our radar. I think you represented the town very well, and I'm very happy to have you watching our back on this one. So I think the amendment it makes a whole lot of sense, and I'll be curious to see how it moves forward, but I have my support on this one.
Thank you.
Okay, as do I. Okay, let's take a vote. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Randy, great
Thank you
job.
so
Thank
much.
you very much for
See you
coming
next time.
and presenting. Okay, that is the last item on our formal agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Defer.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Good night, Chatham.